Okay, today we are going to be looking at the geography, and we are going to be checking this out. Now, we have looked at several rivers before, okay, and that's one thing I pointed out to you guys early on, is that the major rivers, the Yellow up in China, the Yangtze, major civilizations, early civilizations, developed along rivers. Okay, now we're going to be looking at two other places. We're going to look at the Nile that flows up through Egypt from Lake Victoria, and also out of the Ethiopian highlands. So the Nile River and the Tigris and Euphrates. Now, these rivers here are they're very important, but they're also very different from each other. Okay, the Nile, it originates down around the equator. Okay, the Nile is way down there. So as the Nile starts, it starts out, in fact, right here. This line right here is the equator, 0. Okay. Now the Tigris and Euphrates, they start up above 30. They start off right up here. Okay. In the Taurus and Pontic Mountains, where the Zagros Mountains come in too. And so they're up around 40 degrees north. Okay, 45 degrees right here. That's halfway between the North Pole, 90 degrees, and the equator, 0. So this is very much a mid-latitude area where these two rivers begin. Now, as we look at that, because they're in the mid-latitudes, the river can be very, very much different from the Nile. Okay. Now, let me reduce that a little bit. The Nile River, what you have, and let me see if I can just play with this a little bit. I think I can. Good. Get that a little bit bigger for you. Okay. Now, the Nile River, they are, or it is, let me move this. The Nile River it flows through, it does border on some rainforest. Now, there are 4 different climate zones I want to look at here. Okay, this one, that orange color, this peach color, a light orange, and that yellow. Okay, when we look at the Tigris and Euphrates, we have this brown too. Okay, now that brown, when I look right here, and I can't zoom in very well on that, but we can try to zoom in. When I zoom in on the key, let's see if I can get that key on there. Okay, this is highland, mountain. Okay, so that gray color is going to be the mountains, highland. And that is really where we will get a varied climate. We'll talk about that later. I'm not worried about that yet. But this orange one right here, let me zoom back out and get to the spot where you guys see this. Working the mouse left-handed. Okay, this orange color here, this is rain forest. Okay, and it is hot and rain all year. That is what it talks about, rainforest. Rainforests, I have to check the waterfall, but I think in the Amazon they get up to 400 inches of rainfall a year. It's it's a lot of rain. Now this is a transition climate, okay, between rainforest and desert. This is a seasonal rainforest, or seasonal, but it is called savanna. Okay, and it is a transition climate from basically the rainforest to the deserts. Okay, so here we have rainforest. Now we don't have any deserts in South America until we get way down here. Up here we go from rainforest to savanna to steppe. Now this lighter orange one, this one is called steppe. Okay, and Pullman is actually in the steppe climate. You can't really see it, but we're between the mountains, and right up there we are in steppe climate. And steppe climate gets its name from Ukraine. That's where the steppe is traditionally known to be at. Okay, now this yellow one is desert. Okay, hot and dry, and they only get about 10 inches of rainfall a year at most. A lot of this area in here in Egypt, they'll only get like 3 or 4 inches of text a year. Now, let me erase some of those things, get in here. When we're looking at these, okay, the rainforests, they're going to get rain all year long. But you also have that savanna that is going to be seasonal rain. Now, seasonal rain, this is how the seasons affect it. Okay, my little cloud. Okay, wherever the sun is, let me find my sun now. Where'd my sun go? Here's my sun. Okay, whenever the sun is, okay, it beats down and it's going to create heat, which is going to make the water evaporate, which forms clouds. That's why we have along the equator, we have rainforests. Okay, and so these rainforests are created by that sun heating the water up. Now, in the summertime, June 21st, the sun's going to move up to this line right up here. This line right up here is 23.5 degrees because that is the tilt of our Earth, 23.5 degrees north. It's a Tropic of Cancer. Okay, it is named after the constellation of stars that are behind it, behind the sun. So the sun covers up Cancer. And so when the sun moves up, the clouds move up. Now you still have clouds over the equator because it's going to be hot and rainy all year long around the equator. And so these clouds move up a little bit. But it's going to be dry down here. Okay, in our winter time, again, it's going to be 23.5 degrees, Tropic of Capricorn. Okay, now as the sun moves down, okay, the clouds move down too, and it's going to still rain along the equator, but then it's going to be raining down here south of the equator, and it'll be dry in that area. And so we have this zone move back and forth. Hot and rainy all year long along the equator, seasonal rain north and south of the equator, the savanna. Now, what will that do to the Nile River? Okay, when it is raining in the wintertime down here, it's going to be drier up here in the Ethiopian highlands. But in the summertime, when the rains move up, you're going to get rain there. And so you'll have seasonal floods that are very predictable in Egypt. Okay. All right. Predictable flooding. And so when Egypt floods, they actually have, I think, a name for that season in Egypt. Okay. They know that in the summertime, they're going to get flooding. And so they can plan on it. Now, Mesopotamia is very different. Very different. Now we know about the rainforest down here. Okay, over 30 degrees north, we have a dry zone. It's actually high pressure. Okay, clear skies. Okay, this is low pressure. And rain. Okay, we also have another low pressure zone up around 60. And it's going to be rainy there too. Now, in our wintertime, when this moves down here, this 60-degree rain shadow, or rain, also comes down. But it's not very predictable. Okay, it's going to be not as reliable as the rain around the equator. And so it'll fluctuate quite a bit. When the summertime moves up and we have sunshine up here, that cloud will move up too. And so we tend to get warmer or drier weather in the summertime, especially on the West Coast. And we'll talk about, I'll give you another lecture about the climates later on and tell you about the difference between East and West. But those are two things you got to keep in mind. Okay, these rain clouds north and south, or in the northern hemisphere, will vary quite a bit. Now, typically, the rain in the mid latitudes between 30 and 60 comes from the west. Okay, and so we're going to have the wet side is the west side. Okay, wet is west. And I'll explain some of this later on in a different lecture. Don't worry about that one quite yet. And so let me switch maps again because I want to go back to the physical map. This physical map, when we look at this, and I got to erase this for you guys again. A lot of erasing. That's why my fingers are all fun and colored right now. Before I get to the wet weather, okay, let's look at the mountains, okay, because mountains influence weather too. In the west out here, we have the coastal range, we have the Rockies, okay? Then we have the Andes. We also have the Appalachians, okay? If you look at these mountains, they typically run north to south, north to south, north to south, okay? Yes, we do have the Brooks Range, which is east-west, and the Chugach Range, which is part of that, and it kind of makes that little umbrella for us. But for the most part, mountains in the Western Hemisphere run north and south. Okay, there is no reason except for plate tectonics. Now, in Europe and Asia, we look here. We have the Pyrenees, we have the Atlas Mountains, we have the Alps, we have the Carpathians, we have what is that mountain range in there? I'm not sure. We have the Taurus and the Pontic run through here. We have the Zagros, we have the Caucasus. We have and I can see, oh, there it is, the Hindu Kush. We have the Himalayas that run across, okay? And these typically run west to east, okay? And those will impact the weather there too. So when the winds come across from here, okay, that's going to make our west coast extremely wet. Here, these east to west mountains will prevent cold weather from descending very far south. And so these areas south of the mountains are going to be fairly warm, fairly nice. Now, these mountains here, that is where the water for the Tigris and Euphrates comes from. And that water is going to be a seasonal, well, not so much seasonal, but unpredictable. Not as predictable. Okay? Because sometimes you'll get these winter storms that come down and really dump water on. Sometimes you'll get some summer storms that come over. But it's not going to be reliable like this one down here. So this is much more unpredictable. As you're looking at that, try and think with the different types of flooding. How would that affect the stories? Okay, between Egypt and Mesopotamia. Okay, Meso means between, and Potamia is rivers. It's Greek for the land between the rivers. So how will Egypt and Mesopotamia have different stories based on the floods they get? We'll talk about it. Hope you guys have fun. Enjoy.